I'm going to go ahead and get started here. My name is Preston Law, and I'm a coach at Assured Strategy. I'm also a Lean Six Sigma black belt and a serial entrepreneur. I've founded and exited two companies and gone through a few major acquisitions in my career. And today I'm going to talk about how you can go from cash strapped to cash rich. And I want to preface this with, a common misconception around cash. And, cash is what you have in your bank account to spend. And I think it's directly related to your profit. So a lot of times businesses will focus on revenue instead of focusing on profit. And one really good story about the power of cash is a company called Roper Technologies. And if you look them up, their symbol is on the New York Stock Exchange's ROP. And their mantra is their primary measure of success is cash. And they're kind of a holding company for a number of software firms. And I think their stock has, in the last 15 years, gone from around $25 a share to over 500. So, beating pretty much every company, even Apple, and really focusing on cash. So ROP is is their symbol, and you might want to look them up and see how they think about cash. So let's continue on here. And I'll start with an overview of Assured Strategy. And at Assured Strategy, we are a scaling up firm, and we use really these three books, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, and the new version that just came out of Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, and Scaling Up, a program created by Vern Harnish. That's the program that all of our tools and theories and processes work around. And that is focused on these four decisions: people, strategy, execution, and cash. And these are the four decisions that you need to make to drive and scale growth of your business. And so people, you have to have the right people, of course. Strategy, a lot of businesses go in to start and don't really have a strategy, but things are going well. And you get to a point where, that lack of a strategy doesn't really work for you anymore now that the business has grown. Execution is how you can execute flawlessly and really be the most efficient that you can be as a business. And I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second. I need to admit someone. To sharing. Okay, so back to the four decisions: people, strategy, execution, and cash. Well, today we're going to talk about cash. And one of the tools that we have is we call the cash acceleration tool. And if you look in the upper left-hand corner of the presentation, in that top part of the tool, you'll see the arrows going back and forth on the top, saying that that's the cash conversion cycle. So the cash conversion cycle is how long it takes you to get money from the time that you make the sale. And there's 4 steps here: the sales cycle, your production cycle, delivery, and your billing and payment. And as a business founder myself, I was really concerned in the beginning with that make, production, and inventory piece, and was able to hire a great salesperson and they were able to really knock down the sales cycle. And then we were saying, oh, wait, we have to deliver this. And this was when we were selling software to doctors' offices. Well, we had to get a server in. Oh, well, how much does that cost? What's our margin on that? Well, we have to go on site. What does that cost? How many people do we have who can travel, who can do an installation? And then at the end of that, how are we getting paid? At that point, and it was like, oh, well, we'll get a check before we leave. And if we don't get the check, we'll take the equipment with us. Not really the best way to start off a relationship with a customer, but that was our methodology. And then we had recurring maintenance that, in the beginning, it was easy. I just went in, printed out a bill, changed the name and address, printed out another one, changed the name and address, printed out another one. It was that easy. But as we grew, that billing and payment cycle, sometimes we were 2-3 months behind in our billing. And that caused a cash flow problem, right? If we're that far behind in our billing, we're not able to have the cash in time. And then we're strapped for cash and struggling to make payroll and all those sorts of fun things that small businesses go through. So with this tool and in our cash acceleration cycle, we look at 5 different ways across each of these where you can improve. So the first thing is shorten your cycle time. Like, how long does it take from the time that the sale is closed to the products in the customer's hand? That's your delivery cycle. Then from that point, how long does it take you to generate the bill, and how long does it take to get paid? If you have a, kind of an e-commerce type of business, that luckily is pretty much taken care of for you, and you can get paid right away. Other businesses don't work like that. And the last part of this is improving your business model and profit and loss. So even in your billing and payment cycle, there's ways to improve. I do this with companies and they say, well, how are we going to improve our business model in our billing and payment cycle? Well, one way is, what's your automation? How long does it take to get from the start of that to the end? Are you billing everyone at the end of the month? So some people, but delivering product all throughout the month. So in some times, your time from the delivery to the bill is 30 days, and sometimes it's 1 day. And there are things like that that you can look at, and depending on the type of business you're in, figure out ways to improve that. And of course, eliminating mistakes. Well, this is something where you have to have a really good process in place so that you're not making mistakes, and you have checklists. Like when the pilots are flying a plane, and before they take off, they go through the checklist. Doesn't matter how many times they've gone through it. Doesn't matter how many times they think, oh yeah, we've got this. Doing it in your head is not the same as following a checklist. So those are things that we can do to improve the cash conversion cycle. And any of these tools will be made available to you at the end of the presentation. The other thing we look at is called the power of one. So the power of one is, if you could change one thing, what would that impact be on your cash flow and or operating profit? I would say, and your operating profit. The things that you can control, right? Price increase, volume, cost of goods sold reduction, overheads reduction, reduction in debtor days, stock days, and increase in your creditor days. So if we look at these from the standpoint of that cash conversion cycle, if you're going to increase your volume, that's going to put pressure on your delivery system. Okay, if you're going to increase prices, that can put pressure on your sales and your billing. Cost of goods sold, well, that can put pressure on your, your production cycle. Overheads could be production. It could, hit in any of those areas. Now, I say it's going to put pressure on them. And I look at pressure as in business as internally as a good thing, because if you don't have some sort of pressure and friction inside of the different areas of your business, you got a question, well, are we really pushing each other to be the best that we can be if we're not having that pressure being put there? But in this case, for this tool, we could look at, well, if we changed any one of these, and that's your power of one is one of them, by 1%, what would that impact be on your cash flow or operating profit? If you were able to reduce your cost of goods sold by 50%, well, if you're selling something for $100 and you have a 50% markup, let's say, you're like, hey, that's pretty good. We have 50% markup. Well, what if you switch that to having a 75% markup? What would that do to your cash flow? What would that do to your operating profit? That would be a pretty big increase in both if you could reduce your cost of goods sold by 25%. Okay, and there are a lot of companies that have been able to do that, and it doesn't happen overnight. But focusing on one thing, hey, we're going to focus on our reducing our cost of goods sold, and that's going to make us that much more profitable, incrementally. And that's part of the business that I've wound up focusing on because the price increases. You can only charge what the market will bear for your product. If it's a premium product or low cost product, whatever that may be, it's not always possible to increase your prices. However, increasing your prices can be a really good strategy and actually a great differentiator between you and another supplier or a competitor. It's really can be something that, well, if we raise our prices, we won't have as many customers, is something that people will say to us. And it's not so much that you're going to not have so many customers, but typically the customers that you wind up losing, for lack of a better term, are ones that are really big on pounding your overhead and your costs of goods sold. So raising your prices, the idea is, well, we have maybe a 1% reduction in our customer base, but we've increased our prices by 10%. And you can do the math on that, and that can kind of work out nicely. Of course, you got to be careful of big customers and that sort of a thing. So bottom line with this is a tool to allow you to choose what you want to focus on and to do some math around it to where you can say, hey, if I change it by this is what is going to increase my cash flow and my operating profit. And of course, those are, you need cash to be able to grow, and profitability increases the value of your business. So both of those things are really great to work on. And this Power of One tool is, I think, very simple and, like in the name, very powerful. Now, we do have a system that if you go to the assuredstrategy.com website and free offers, it's called the cash flow story. And we can work with you on this to come up and say, hey, what is your power of one? So if we're going to say my power of one is one here, well, to get there, we're going to increase our volume, reduce cost of goods sold, we're actually going to increase our overhead by doing those things, but we're going to reduce our receivables and inventories, and all of a sudden we have a really big impact on both our cash flow and our operating profit. Okay, cash flow is important so that if you have the cash on hand, you can spend that, utilize that for growth, get better terms on some things that you're buying, buy more in bulk, let's say, which kind of may go past, well, if I buy more, doesn't that increase my my inventory days? Well, but if we have a larger volume, then it's typically a wash, but that cash can be leveraged internally within your business instead of by other companies, by your being leveraged by your suppliers. And again, it's assuredstrategy.com, and it's the under free offers cash flow story. Okay, so back to the 4 decisions. Now, if we look at this, I just showed you a couple of tools about cash. Well, part of those cash tools that I kind of focused on, and I saw this is been my focus recently in businesses, is the execution side. So cash, execution, strategy, people, all these things are tied together, right? That's why it's 4 decisions and not 1 decision and 3 smaller decisions. All of these really need to have the same amount of attention to be successful in scaling a business. Now, on the execution decisions, it's really 1 question. Are all your processes running without drama? That's part of the people, and driving industry-leading profitability. Well, that's your connection to cash and to your strategy. So what are some of the ways that this process is running without drama and driving industry-leading profitability help you in your cash flow story? Well, 1, we said reduce cost of goods sold, reduce overhead, and we have this tool for typical wastes. Typical waste in a business: quality, delays, right person in the right seat, controls, optimized process flow, and value to deliverables. So the things that can cause you problems: defects. Okay, someone gets a product that's defective. Now you have to go back and fix it, make the customer happy, and you're spending time, taking care of that quality issue. And typically companies will be spending a lot of time doing that and say, oh, we're too busy fixing all of our problems to eliminate them from happening in the first place. And this is where Assured Strategy can come into play. We help a lot of companies with time management and people management to be able to increase their quality. Delays, right? Internal delays. There's a great book on the theory of constraints by Eli Goldratt, and he gets into really good detail about where are your constraints in your business in a storytelling kind of way, not in a numbers and scientific way. It's really a great read. And if you're delayed, well, what does that do? If you remember that cash conversion cycle, it makes that longer because you're waiting internally for equipment, people, parts, those sorts of things. Then the right person in the right seat. How many times have maybe you have, or a friend, or on Instagram or TikTok, you see people saying, well, I hired this person to help, but I don't have the time to train them correctly because it's faster for me just to do it myself. Yet the business made that investment in that person to help you get things done. So the opposite of the right person in the right seat is underutilization of the talent. If that person's there, are they being fully utilized? Are they in the right seat in your organization? It could be a great person, a great asset to the business from your core values. They're really running that very smart, but they're not doing something that they're passionate about in your business. So they're not doing it to the best of their extent. And that's what we mean by right person in the right seat. And, then if you have overproduction, you have piles and piles of things in your warehouse, in storage, and you're just not selling them. That's just money, essentially, that you have sitting in your inventory that is a cost. So you really have to be in control of your production to maximize your cash. And if you think back to the power of one, if hopefully you're not at a zero in your typical wastes, but you can move further, like just 1 or 2% at a time, going from overproduction into being in control of production. Optimizing the process flow, is kind of tied closely, I think, to no delays. Well, if you have, in an assembly line type of building of a product, it's like everything is one right after the other. But if you have a thing where the part has to go from this person's workstation across the factory to another person's workstation and then back to someone who's sitting right next to the person where it started, that's a very simple example of excess movement. Excess movement could also be if you're in more of a soft goods kind of a business. That could be the time from it going from one person to the next person for approval and then back. Okay, what is that time that you have? When is the information moving back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, where that could be identified as something that could be consolidated and you can move faster. And then the value to the deliverables versus over processing. So if you have process steps that don't add value to the customer, then you got to question, why are you doing it? Now, you need to be doing it for a regulatory reason. Okay, well, essentially that's adding value to the customer because they can't use it if it's not compliant to the particular regulation. But, Elon Musk had an article, I think, in Forbes magazine about this, where when they go through a process improvement exercise, they ask with every step, well, what's the value to the customer of us performing this step? So you can do that exercise, and I'm going to show you kind of a 3-step way of doing that and asking questions and saying, hey, why are we doing this? Is it valuable to our customer? And the big thing when you go through one of these exercises is if the reason why you're doing something in that step is because so-and-so says we have to, that's not a good reason to be doing it. So once you've come up with your power of one, you say, hey, I want to change a particular, get better at eliminating a typical waste. Well, with this tool, you can say, well, what are we going to start, stop, or keep doing in that particular area? And this is a great way to document a conversation around, okay, we want to reduce our defect rate. Okay, what should we start doing to reduce that? What should we stop doing and what should we keep doing? And you'll see here there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 employees. And the reason why we have that here is because if your employees are, or you as an employee, are involved in the process of improving, or I'll say the methodology for improving something, if you're involved, well, you inherently have more ownership of it. It's not like, oh, so-and-so told me to do this, I don't know if that's going to work or not. Is a completely different attitude from, hey, I said, I believed that this is what we should do, and I've been listened to, and I'm going to try it out. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. And that's an important piece to say whenever embarking on anything like this, that, if something doesn't work out, that's okay. We learned not to do that. Now we're going to try something else. And by doing this, by involving employees, what should we start, stop, or keep doing, that really is powerful to help improve your processes. Now, in this, you do have to give your employees the permission to fail. Okay, that it's not, or to make a mistake, or for it not to be optimal, whatever you want to call it, so that they're comfortable with continuing to do everything they can to improve. And the second thing is, they say, well, we should stop doing this, or we should start doing this, but we can't because. Well, we can't because, simplest thing, we can't because we don't have the money. Well, we can't because so-and-so won't approve me spending the money. And just within the last month, I was in 2 meetings where through a similar exercise, and someone said, yeah, we really want to start doing that, but the CEO won't approve that spend. The CEO was in the room. He said, I didn't even know that you had asked for this. He said, well, I didn't ask for it because some other person said you were going to say no anyway. Or someone in the middle didn't run it up and say, oh, we believe that spending, $10 is going to save us $100 a day. And, focusing on that, well, I had to spend $10. But long story short, the team was living in the world of can't because. So when you're living in the world of can't because, you're not going to move forward. You need to move out of the world of can't because into the world of can if. Okay, so what should we start doing? We should start, using, powered forklifts instead of manual. I don't know what they're actually called, but I think you get the picture. And yeah, but well, we can't do that because those cost money. Well, what is the impact of that? Well, it would mean that we could produce twice as much in the factory as we do now. Even a second grader could say, well, that makes a lot of sense. That's a lot of value returned on that spend. So bottom line on this one, make sure that as you go through this, you have a theory of, or a mindset of can if and not can't because. So that's start, stop, keep. Now, as I've gone through a lot of this stuff in process improvement, reduction of cost of goods sold, tighter turnaround, the reduction of your cash conversion cycle, there's a couple of methodologies that people know, and like I'm certified in Six Sigma, which is a methodology. It actually came from, I believe, Japan in the 60s. It really got popularized in the US by GE in the 70s and 80s. And it is, a lot of measurements and math and breaking down everything along that cycle. How much time does it take? And is your longest one the longest time frame, and the shortest time frame are those within 6 standard deviations of the mean in your industry? And you say all these words and people are like, what are you talking about? So I found it mysterious and complicated. And I think a lot of that is because there's a whole bunch of people who are Six Sigma consultants who just want to make money being Six Sigma consultants. For better or worse, they help companies because they're taking something very complex and helping a company put it in place. But that's not really the best thing, especially for a small business that's just trying to grow. It's a lot of work. It's quite a bit. There's other methodologies where, again, it's high spend on consultants. You got to learn all these things. And I say, really, they say when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So there's a simple way that we come up with an Assured strategy to, once you identified those things that you want to change, you've gone through some sort of start, stop, keep. Hey, these are things that we should be doing. And you say, well, we're really not sure what the process is, what's the best way to do it, not sure where our bottlenecks are in this, what's another way that we can kind of go beyond that, off the top of the head, start, stop, keep list. And that's what we call this 3-step process: write, question, and measure. WQM for process improvement. So 3 simple steps that are kind of in the opposite direction of where a lot of the more complicated techniques start, because those all start with taking measurements, measure, and then go in and saying, okay, this is the one, these are the things we can need to change. Well, that works out great if you have the money on hand to measure, and if you actually have a process that people are trained in and are working through. Well, what I found is that in growing businesses, that process has degraded over time. So what was good for 2 people is not as good as for 3 people or 4 people who are doing the same thing. So this process of write, question, and measure, we're going to do an exercise where, again, like in the start, stop, keep, a number of people who do the process day in and day out will do something very simple: post-it notes, ask the question, what's your first step that you're going to do for, say, use the example of out of office. Well, if you ask people around the company, what's the first step you take when you're getting ready to go on vacation? Everybody's going to have a different answer. And some people will say, oh, I notify my clients first. Or, oh, I make sure everyone has my cell phone number so they can call me for some imagined emergency. Or I'm going to change my email signature, or I'm going to inform HR, or I'll get my time off approved. Whatever that is, it's different. And you may even have a documented process for that. And this is a good way to see, are people even following that process? So you go step by step with the post-it notes, putting them up on a whiteboard, like in this example here, and then ask a bunch of questions. So, as you're going step by step, you have everybody's answers, step 1, 2, 3, 4, like that, up on the board, and then question, right? Like, why is everyone doing this and everyone's not doing that? Why does one person say that this particular step is important and 5 people say it's not? This will allow you to take all of those different steps and eliminate some steps, put some decisions in to say, well, okay, these people are doing it because these people are doing that step because they're looking at delivering this particular part to an ambulance company, whereas these other people are delivering that part to a lawnmower company. So they have different reasons, different specs on the tolerance of the part and so on. So now instead of having one process step that everyone's doing the same way, it's okay to have it being done two separate ways, and then you can do something in your process, like putting a decision statement in where, okay, if you're in this part of the business, you do it this way. If you're in the other part of the business, you do it the other way. And this whole questioning of everything that's up on the board, great question is, does it provide value to the customer? So that way you can kind of hone that process down and then come up with some simple measurements that will say, okay, what is a simple way that we can measure those changes that we did in those other two steps and see if they had any impact? And most companies, now if you have a lot of measurements, awesome. Most companies don't have a lot of measurements. So I say, look, just have someone at the end take a minute or take a second to say, well, we had one part come out, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are all the ones without defects, and count the ones with defects and say, okay, what was that before? So you do have to have some idea of a start to where you're going to improve from, but it doesn't have to be complicated. It does not have to be complicated. Keep this first step of measuring simple. And once you've gone through the right question and measure, and you've identified your waste areas, well, now you can formalize the documentation, put it, in a documentation library, make it part of your training program, etc. But those exercises and those tools will help you to identify your waste areas and improve upon them using that three-step method. So I'll pause here and see if we have any questions. So you can unmute and ask or raise your hand. All right, so the next thing here is if you would like a business process gap assessment, if you schedule this with us through the website by November 30th, it'll be at no charge, and this can be a great place to start in identifying where that cash is not there for your business. And I'm happy to do that. So please feel free, email the info at Assured Strategy if you have questions about that, and we can go ahead and set that up. This is an example of what you get. We'll give you an executive summary report, and we'll go through and ask a lot of questions of a sampling of people in your organization. And it takes about, each of those interviews takes about half an hour. And if you would like any of the tools that I shared today, go ahead and reach out to info@assuredstrategy.com or give us a call and we can share those tools with you. And if you're looking for more information about growth and growing your business, we have a couple of other webinars coming up in the coming months, as well as in-person workshops in San Antonio, Dallas, and in Boston. So I hope you found this valuable, and the recording will be made available. And feel free to reach out at the info@assuredstrategy.com or to me directly at plaw@assuredstrategy.com. Thank you for your time today, and I hope you have a pleasant rest of your day and weekend.